Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Talbot, and I am Managing Director, Head of Research here at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on uranium today, and we are going to hear from Azincourt Energy Management, including Alex Klenman, his CEO, and Trevor Perkins, VPX of the company. Now, during today's webinar, they will provide an overview and outlook, and then we'll take some questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can. But before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this Azincourt webinar, forward-looking statements may be made, and I direct listeners to their forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of Azincourt's corporate presentation. That can be found on their corporate website, azincourtenergy.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I'd highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors, and participants should really rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. So please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Azincourt Energy. Now, before we get to it, I just wanted to say a few words. You know, we've got ongoing news from Ukraine and the fear of Russian uranium and enrichment disruptions that seem to have dissipated somewhat. We have seen Sprott physical uranium trust buying slowing, and there's been downward pressure on the uranium prices, much like other commodities in the space. So uranium did start the year at $40 a pound, and it surpassed $63 a pound in April. That's the highest we've seen since March 2011. However, it's since settled back to $46.75. I'd note that's almost $7 higher than where we started this year. So bottom line, we still like the fundamentals for driving uranium prices higher. With disinvestment in the uranium sector, there have been lack of exploration and discoveries, and new mines will be needed in the coming years to replace those mine closures, let alone cover the growth in uranium demand we expect to see. So with that, I now turn it over to Alex to update the audience on our company, on their company.
Yes, thanks, Dave. Much appreciated. And thanks for all in attending for their attendance today. We're gonna kind of rip through the deck and really just get into East Preston and our plans for the next 8 to 12 months. Most of you are here because you are aware of who we are. We're Azincourt Energy. We're an exploration company based primarily in the Athabasca Basin or on the perimeter of the basin. There's our disclaimer. I'm sure you've all read many disclaimers before. The key point here is that technical information you'll see and hear today and is always vetted and approved by Trevor, our QP. We all know about the supply-demand fundamentals. Dave alluded to it a moment ago. I won't go through all this. I won't go through management. Most of you are aware of who we are, what we're doing. Let's just really get into East Preston. I should mention a brief overview of what we're working with. We have the East Preston project, control over 75% now of the project. It's 25,000 hectares on the southwestern section of the basin, really on the perimeter. We have Hatchet Lake, which is almost 14,000 hectares in the northeastern section along that Wilson corridor, which is really where all the production is, and we're in a great position there. We're earning in with Valor Metals up to 75% on that project, and we have a small package of projects in Peru. Everyone knows the basin is really ground zero for economical deposits of size and scope, and that's what we find here. The western section for us is really an area that makes sense. There's been discovery in the area in the last decade or so, and it's really opened up the ground to work that hadn't been done prior. And the nice thing is, obviously, in areas like this, you don't see the overburden, the sandstone that you need to drill through elsewhere or within the basin itself. Our neighborhood is pretty high rent. You can see these market caps as of June 20th. A lot of those market caps have even eroded further thanks to broad market issues. And again, uranium equity is not immune from the drag down. We're all in the same boat. We're all seeing it. A lot of charts are very similar at the moment, as are the indices. In our neighborhood, you can see NextGen and Orano next door to us. You can see other companies in the neighborhood. And like the area, it's high rent for a reason. One of the things you see here with our East Preston project is Orano has put put a ton of money into developing Preston proper, and we've done the same thing on East Preston. And the work that we've done has delineated over 30 kilometers of conductive trends. These are high criteria priority zones, first order criteria that you have to find to pursue uranium deposition, and we have it in spades. I'm going to hand it over to Trevor just to do a brief overview of how we got to where we're at, and then we'll get into the results that we announced this morning. Go ahead, Trevor.
Thank you, Alex. So, yes, a little bit of a brief history of the East Preston project to begin with. I mean, we acquired the project when in 2017. The project has been being worked since 2014. Initially, ground surveys airborne surveys were ran over the property to identify conductive trends on the property. Now, we want to focus in on conductive trends, of course, because in the Athabasca Basin especially, the unconformity uranium deposits seem to be closely associated with basement conductive trends. So as you can see on this slide here, the conductive trends were identified through the central portion of the property first. We have our AG trend, which sort of runs through the central portion. And we have the KHQ trend, which also runs through the central portion of the property just to the east of the AG trend. So they form sort of two corridors through the central portion of the property. Now, you can also see in this slide, we have parallel trends to the west that have not been tested yet as well, or examined. And you've got a couple of bullseye conductive targets to the east, which will require testing at some point as well. Now, once we identified the conductive trends through the airborne surveys, we then go in with a ground survey, a ground electromagnetic survey, to identify exactly where the conductor is within that trend. So that's the squiggly lines on this figure shown here. And the colored lines in the background for the ground surveys we did, the colored background is the gravity survey we ran at the same time we were doing the HLEM. So the idea is identify where the conductors are, use the gravity to show, hopefully we're seeing disrupted ground indicating structure or alteration in the area as well. And so the thing I would like to note here is we see abundant targets on the property. There's no shortage of targets that we have to run in this area. Now, looking at what has previously been done on the property prior to the work we did in the last year or so, we drilled 24 holes previously on the property between us and the previous operators, focusing mainly on the A and AB zones and just starting to touch on the G zone, which is through the, so we got our A zone up at the top of the slide, the G zone at the bottom of the slide. So we were running mostly in those areas first. Now we identified good lithologies, good structure, elevated base metals, which are our typical pathfinder minerals, as well as some indications that there were some rare earth elements also on the property. So it's all good signs showing us that the right things were happening. Now, moving on to the 2020-21 program. That program, which we ran last year, was the first program I was involved in on the property. We had planned to do 10 to 12 holes. We only did 5 holes. Winter shut us down a little early with spring breakup coming. What this showed us, though, again, we were definitely seeing good lithologies, nice structures located along our trends. As we moved south along the AG trend into the north end of the G zone, we were seeing we were starting to see elevated uranium, 2 to 3 times our background values. Again, showed us this is where we wanted to be. Then we moved into our 2021-2022 program. We start to see this program that we just completed this winter. We drilled 5,000 meters. It was the largest program to date on the property, and it started to show us that we're seeing good alteration zones. We identified 3 alteration zones in our G zone, K zone, and H zone. Now, between these 3 zones, we have 1,700 meters worth of alteration. Very good signs. We're seeing wide alteration halos, and yeah, it's what we want to see. Now, if we look at just our G zone to start here, we're seeing we completed 9 holes in this area. We have extensive hydrothermal alteration showing up on the south end of the trend with what appears to be a steep east-west cross-cutting structure coming through at the very top part of that red circle I've shown on the slide. Now, in this area, we have the southernmost hole showing us 19.5 ppm uranium, and we're seeing a uranium-thorium ratio of 0.08. Now, I'm talking about uranium-thorium because I want to demonstrate that typically the thorium is significantly higher than the uranium, up to 4 to 5 times the uranium values in the types of rocks we're seeing in the area. So showing that we've got uranium-thorium ratio closer to 1 or even above 1 shows us we've got a lot more uranium in the system than we would normally expect. And you'll see this on slides coming forward as well. And, we're just trying to demonstrate we've got our uranium enrichment here, which is a very good sign in this area. Now, moving on to our K zone, we completed 6 holes in this area. Every single hole showed us extensive hydrothermal hematite alteration, and in the central portion of the trend, we're actually starting to see clay alteration. Hole 35, right in the middle of the trend, in the middle of the red circle I've shown here, showed us that we also had elevated radioactivity, 10 times our background values. So, of course, we were very excited about this. Now, geochemistry from this zone gave us 5.4 ppm uranium and a 1.2 uranium-thorium ratio. Now, these values are 5 times what we would expect in the base rocks. So we've got the elevated radioactivity, and we're seeing that there's uranium enrichment associated with that elevated radioactivity as well. And this alteration zone, it's very extensive. It is not closed off yet. We can still extend it to the north up into our B zone and potentially connect it with our H zone to the south as well. Now, moving on to the H zone, we completed 3 holes at the north end of the H zone. We were just getting started testing our H zone when we had to shut down at the end of the winter season. Now we're seeing very thick alteration package here, as well as a very strong graphitic fault zone. Now we were expecting to see a more complex structural scenario in this area because we are seeing a significant bend in our conductive trend coming down through here. And bends and breaks in the conductive packages are always good areas to focus in on as well. So we're hoping as drilling continues here, we may start to see more concentration in our alteration and in our uranium values as well. This zone may be connected with the K zone. We're not sure yet because there has been no drilling in between. There is a 2-kilometer gap between these 2 areas of drilling at the moment. Of significance in here as well, hole 41, for example, returned 12.5 ppm uranium. The uranium-thorium ratio is not quite as high as in previous areas, but we're still seeing significant uranium enrichment over what we would expect to see based on the host rocks that have been caught up in the structure here. Again, all good signs. We're liking what we're seeing. So moving on to a general overview of the property from what we're seeing so far. These alteration zones, which all put together, a total of about 1,700 kilometers, are very good
1,700
signs.
meters. Sorry, 1,700 meters. You said 1,700 kilometers.
Sorry, 1,700 meters. I'd love it if they were 1,700 kilometers, but no, 1,700 meters. Sorry about that. Alteration that we're seeing, we typically see alteration associated with all of the major uranium deposits. It forms sort of a halo around the deposits. Some of these halos can be quite broad. Some of them can be very small and concentrated. We're looking at what we're hoping is a very broad halo around around a potential deposit, which we just haven't focused in on yet. But the elevated uranium we're seeing within the alteration system is a very clear sign that we've got the right fluids flowing through our alteration system. And now we just need to continue drilling to focus in on where these where this alteration and uranium is more concentrated, where we're starting to see more abundant clay, and our main area of focus where we want to zero in on the deposit. So we're planning a huge program for this winter coming up. Permitting is already in progress, and hopefully we'll be able to hit the ground running again in December as we did last year and expand on these zones.
Great. Thanks, Trevor. I just want to add a few things to it. So in a quick sort of layman's terms summary of what we just did, I guess one of the main things you need to do is provide evidence or be shown evidence that uranium-bearing fluids not only were present in the area, but more importantly and critically, that they were present within these alteration zones. So we've done that. Sure, we would have liked to have seen bigger numbers, more robust numbers, but evidence is evidence, and really it's just going to help us hone in on these areas. Now, one of the issues that we do have is the alteration zones are quite big. So it's not like we can, almost 2 kilometers of ground there where there's primary targets. And when you realize the footprints of uranium deposits, we always talk about that. I believe it's Zone 2 at MacArthur that is at 200 million pounds, but it basically occupies a 90 meter by 40 meter by 70 meter depth footprint. So you can see how hiding in plain sight something of size can occur, and so that's our hope. Obviously, that we're going to run into something of size, but we've got so much ground to cover. And all this good news to digest. Over the next several months, Trevor and our technical team will be going through all of the geochem, all of the data that we pulled from this previous round, and looking to see where we think the priority zones are for pooling. And there's one specific area, I believe it's in the K zone, where there's a nice bend. It's probably going to be a priority target for us. But we'll be determining that over the next couple of months, and we'll be ready to go in the winter. And we'll speak to Hatchet Lake momentarily. I know there's a lot of interest in that as well. And then we'll get to some of the questions. So why don't we jump into Hatchet Lake real quick, and then I'll do another brief overview of what our exploration plans are over the next 8 to 12 months, because we're going to be busy. Go ahead, Trevor.
All right, so looking at our Hatchet Lake property, this is where our first work will occur later this year. We've entered into an option agreement with Valor Metals to earn up to 75% interest in this property. So we're quite excited about it. We're on the east side of the basin with this property in a structural trend and structural corridor that at this point contains all of the currently producing mines and a lot of the recently producing mines in the Athabasca Basin as well. So it's the right neighborhood to be in. It's 13,000 hectares. It's been worked on and off since the 60s and 70s. It's a very exciting area to be in. We're located approximately 39 kilometers along trend from the Rough Rider and Midwest deposits, and 30 kilometers north of Cameco's Eagle Point mine. It's a recently producing mine. This property is outside the edge of the basin in an area that's historically been ignored until recently, when attention started turning back to the already exposed margins of the basin rather than being under the sandstone cover. So work was conducted here in the 60s and 70s by Gulf Minerals, and Saskatchewan Mining and Development Corporation continued doing some work in the 70s and 80s. Then the property sat dormant until the 2000s. The previous work included very minor diamond drilling, some geophysics, extensive boulder, soil, and lake sediment sampling, and even some biogeochemical samples were taken on the property. So looking at a close-up on the property, 2 high priority zones have been identified by previous operators, the Upper Manson and the Southwest Scrimes zones. Our reviews of the data so far still keep those areas as high priorities, but we've also got a few other areas we would like to focus in on doing some examinations once we've looked at the high priority areas as well. Most of the highlighted target areas are shown in black circles on this slide here. So some of the previous sampling on the property, especially in the Upper Manson area, grab samples of radioactive boulders have returned values up to 2.43% U3O8, and we're seeing other extensive radioactivity identified in boulders all along these this trend within these 2 main target areas. So that we've got the right lithologies occur in the area. You're on a transition between 2 major domains. The Wollaston domain on the east side is considered important for hosting all of the main deposits, all of the previously producing deposits on the east side of the basin. So we've got the right rock types. We're seeing radioactive boulders, and based on movement of glaciers coming down from the northeast, we estimate that the sources for these boulders should still be existing on our property. And we're very excited to get in there this fall and start drilling. Our plan is to do some reconnaissance work in September, and then hopefully be drilling in October and into early November. And we'll finish up this program in time to start our East Preston program.
Perfect. Thanks, Trevor. Now that's exactly where we want to be. So it's important to note we have 2 properties of merit. East Preston is our flagship based on the work that's gone on and how close we're getting to the ultimate goal, and the favorable results from all the work that we've done as pushing the project forward. Probably not as fast as some people would want, but uranium exploration is not a quick business. We're well capitalized to be able to do what we're doing. We've got approximately $12 million in the bank, which is, I think we're actually trading beneath our cash value, which is kind of crazy. And when you realize, the $7-8 million that we put into East Preston, we're not getting any credit for that. We're not the only ones. Everybody's been beaten down. But it's important to note that the next 8 to 12 months are going to be super busy for us. We're in mid-July. So in 4 weeks, we'll probably be talking about what we're doing at Hatchet in the fall. We're going to spend $1 million to $2 million on drilling in the fall. We haven't set budgets yet. We're going to figure that all out. And so that drill program will happen very quickly, in a matter of weeks. And then we'll get back to East Preston and drill some more holes based largely on what we've pulled from this last drill program. So there's a lot of high quality indicators that we're going to have to go through. And as I mentioned, Trevor and the technical team, which is also Jared Brown and Terralogic, they work closely together and they're quite the technical support. So we're going to get in there and figure out just where the next holes go and continue the process of moving things forward. I think if we didn't run into any uranium values whatsoever in those alteration zones, we'd be scratching our heads. The fact is we did. And that's the evidence that we need to move forward confidently. And that's exactly the best way to say it. We've got the data we need, and really the most important thing here: 2 requirements. Number 1, capital, which we have, and number 2, patience, which is something that is short in a bad market, let alone a good market. So we have the patience. We're going to get the work done while the sky is falling on our heads, you know, when we come out of this, and we will, we know we will. Trevor and I did a conference a few weeks back, and there were a lot of institutional representatives in our calls, and to a person, everybody's investment thesis in the uranium space is intact, and they're quite bullish. Their capital will flow back into the space, and as Dave mentioned on the outset, the spot price is really strong. It really is at 46. It's amazing that everyone's beaten down, but in terms of commodity price, that's very robust and very strong, and I think, you know, 50 to 60, getting back to that range is not too far off. So those are our plans over the next little while. I guess you know, there's a standard slide. Currently 12 million in cash, or in that neighborhood. 227 million shares out. We're trading at a ridiculously low market cap. But you know, in an environment like this, all you can do is look at it as a fire sale, and we're pretty certain that our cash position and our projects are enough to pull us out of this trough faster, or sooner rather than later, and in a significant way. So that's it, Dave. If you want to open up Q&A, I see there's some questions. I'd love to answer all of them. Happy to do that in order. You tell me what's first.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Alex and Trevor. Very informative presentation. So, yeah, we'll kick off the Q&A portion of the webinar right now. And a reminder to everybody on the line, you can type your questions in the chat box at any time. And as you mentioned, we do have a few questions already. So let's start off. You reported this morning anomalous uranium and thorium in the press release. Can you tell us the importance of those results, why you provided the thorium results at East Preston?
Trevor, that's for you, my friend.
Well, I identified and released some thorium results as well to show the significance of the uranium values that we are seeing. Because typically in the host rocks we have in the area, you're going to see thorium values that are 4 to 5 times higher than the uranium. So when we're seeing uranium equivalent to or higher than the thorium values, so that's when you're getting this thorium-uranium or uranium-thorium ratio of 1 or above, or getting close to 1, you're showing it's a good indication that you have uranium enrichment, that you're seeing extra uranium flowing around in the system in excess of what would be expected.
Right. I think so. The easy answer is it's a great comparative value to give people a real perspective on the uranium numbers. Yeah,
that's a good way to put it, for sure.
Okay, great. And could you comment maybe why the market's not reacting well with the assay results?
Yeah, we'd love to. Number one, we're in a bad market. We know that really anything other than a world-class drill hole is going to get any notice in a market like this. So that's primarily what we're seeing. We're not going to sugarcoat it. The other part of it is, I think uranium exploration is complex. It's not super easy. If it was super easy, everybody be doing it. And although when spot ran, everybody did seem to be doing it. Here we are. It takes time, and you have to see incremental improvements. It's not horrible. What's horrible is the macro picture, and here we are. We're all getting beat down. But again, and speaking to some very sophisticated investors in the funds in particular, they're looking forward, and I think everybody's ready for the next phase.
Right. I'd add that you need to find the smoke before you can hit the fire, and that sometimes takes time. It takes dozens.
Yeah, we got a lot of smoke.
Good analogy.
There's no doubt about it. And we have a lot of smoke. We have more smoke than most, and based on the size and scope of the alteration zones, how much we have in the way of targets and those conductive trends. We're not shy. We're not a postage stamp. We've got a lot to work with.
Yeah. Now, sort of a related question here. You are giving the market hard chemical assay results at the end of the program, but why do you not provide CPS or counts per second numbers?
Well, we certainly had them, and Trevor can speak to those numbers for sure.
Honestly, as a QP, I am not comfortable with counts per second reporting, as counts per second are highly variable depending on the type of instrument, the quality of the crystal, how old the instrument is. There's a lot of variation in your counts per second, so it's very easy to misinterpret, unless you can demonstrate recent calibrations and good quality equipment. So, I mean, 15,000 counts on one instrument can mean a completely different thing on another type of instrument. So it's very key to pay attention to what type of instruments are being used when you're looking at your counts per second and what those numbers actually mean.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I think people, especially in a bad market, you're going to look
at your report CPS.
Sure, right. So. You can have high CPS from thorium. You can have it from potassium. You can have it from a number of things. So for us to just put those out there without qualifying them in a very specific, extreme way, it would be really beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Right. I completely agree with you guys. I've been doing this since 2007 on the uranium side. There's no direct relationship between counts per second and assays or how much uranium is actually there. So, then the market guesses how much uranium could be there. When the assays come, even if they're good, the market often overlooks them thinking the news is already out there. So, right. If it's a discovery, maybe I can see that, but I'm not a fan of them either. So
makes sense.
Get that. So, okay. Are there any specific geophysical anomalies that can be related to the mineralization that you reported this morning, or alteration that you're finding? Something that will help you find the next target.
Okay, so I didn't quite understand what you were asking there.
Essentially, is there any relationship between the geophysics and today's mineralized results? So, is there anything that will help you find the next targets?
Well, we're seeing that it's definitely associated with where we're seeing our conductors. We're definitely seeing anomalies within our gravity data where the alteration zone is occurring. Now what we have to do is dig back into that gravity data a little bit deeper and see if there's any nuances within the data that may indicate, that may be tying in with where we're seeing the better alteration and the elevated uranium that may help us better focus. But it's going to require a deeper dive into the gravity data to see any slight variations that may or may not tie in.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
There's a question.
Looking for the roots of an unconformity deposit that's no longer there because it's been eroded away above us.
Okay, and you mentioned you have no shortage of targets. So how do you make those priorities? How do you prioritize?
Good question.
The first priority was the best conductors. Second priority is where we are seeing magnetic and gravity anomalies overlapping with best conductors, so that to help us focus in. So first you want the conductor, then you want some evidence that you're seeing some disruption along the conductor, which is what those surveys basically give us.
Okay. And you seem to be focused on north-south trending conductors at East Preston, perhaps akin to, say, Shea Creek trend to the north. Do you see any near east-west trending structures that you like, something that's, similar to Triple R or Arrow trend, the Patterson Lake trend?
Definitely when we see good, strong east-west trends or east-west conductors, we will examine them as well. Our first priority focus is where potential east-west are intersecting the northeast trending structures as well. But yeah, if one of the east-west trending structures we run across or shows up in the geophysics, we'll test it as well.
Okay, great. Do you still plan to be aggressive and ramp up your drilling at East Preston next winter? What scale of project do you foresee? Sort of how many drills, how many drill holes would you plan given the size of alteration?
Yeah, no, I'll jump on that, and then Trevor, I'll let you finish. Yes, there's the evidence presented in this drill round suggests that we should be doing something equally to what we've just done. So that's a $3 to $4.5 million program. And it's going to be around 5,000, 6,000 meters. And we're going to look to drill specifically into some of the better targets that, we really didn't know existed prior to.
Planning to have 2 drills in the area for the winter season as well. And hopefully we'll get a little bit better production than we did last year and be able to cover a bit more ground. Any more than 2 drills at this point till we get into something is a bit overkill, and just makes logistics and management that much more difficult till we actually have something we can focus in on and drill till there's nothing left to drill, so to speak.
Right. Okay. So you have 72% interest, I believe, in East Preston right now. Do you have any plans to increase ownership in East Preston? Is that happening simply through dilution of other partners via exploration spending?
Exactly. We have 2 partners on the JV. One is Sky Harbor, the other is Dixie Gold. Dixie Gold is not participating, so we're eating up Dixie's potential 15%. We're well into that now, and I think we're going to be close to 80% when the dust is finally settled from this program that we just completed. Trevor, you remember those numbers? I don't, but I know we're close to 80.
Yeah, it'll be just under 80% when we're finished here.
Yeah, and really the path to 85 is right in front of us. By next year's winter drill program, we'll probably be real close to 85%.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Was the data analysis work that FOBI provided, was that of any value, and do you plan to expand on that relationship?
Right. Yeah, no, none of anything working with them has come into play yet. This data will go into it, and we hope to see the fruits of that relationship next winter.
Yes. Yeah, we're still feeding them more data for their little black box to start spitting stuff out for us.
Sounds good. Look forward to it. So, okay, let's move over to Hatchet Lake here a little bit. You're about to start working on the second project, giving it some attention you haven't done prior. What do you need to do at Hatchet Lake, and when do you expect drilling to begin?
I'll just jump on that real quick, and then Trevor finish, because we tend to tag team well like that. Yes, we haven't done any work because we just acquired the exploration play to a certain degree. So the first step that we have in the JV agreement, or the earn-in agreement, is to spend $1 million. So we're going to spend at least $1 million this fall, and we're going to be drilling. So Trevor can elaborate on the total plans, but drilling will happen very quickly at Hatchet.
Mm-hmm. So the biggest delaying at Hatchet Lake, why we haven't been in there, why we're not in there already this summer, is permitting. We've applied for our permits. We hope to have them in place by the end of August. And the idea is we then are going to go in and see some of these anomalies that they've identified, check out some of the areas ourselves on the ground, do a little bit of ground truthing, and then bring in a drill. And we'll do a short drill program this fall with helicopter supported. It's a bit difficult place to get into in the summer, so we have to do a helicopter supported program. Get a lay for the land, help us scout out areas to potentially put in a road for future winter programs as well. But get our feet wet with a smaller program. And see if what we're seeing actually is what we're expecting to see.
Yeah, no, let me add something to that. Sometimes people get concerned about helicopter programs being expensive. I can tell you, and Trevor can back this up, that winter road prep in this environment with inflated costs is expensive on its own. So by looking at the economics of it, the heli-supported drilling at Hatchet Lake will not be significantly more than if we had to build and maintain roads, which we spent quite a bit of money on at East Preston last year.
I mean, we want to put a road in there to make access easier, but we've got to go in and scout the area out first, and we might as well be drilling while we're scouting out the best ways to put a road in. There's a fairly significant river we have to cross, so we got to figure out how we're going to get to the best place on that. Well, we've already started discussions with the Yathenene, who are the authorized representative for most of the bands up in that area, and we'll be in close communication with them through the whole process to make sure that the needs and desires of the community are also met, and that we don't disrupt their activities in that area too much as well. So, we're developing those relationships very, very early on in the process. And I mean, I've worked with the Hatchet Lake and Wollaston Lake bands in the past quite extensively as well. So, we'll continue to build on those relationships and make sure they're involved in the whole process.
Okay. So you're outside the Athabasca Basin proper in that area. You don't have any overlying sandstone again there. What are some sort of the positive attributes that come from working in these unexplored areas without sandstone? I guess, helicopter or access notwithstanding, is it easier to find things when there's no sandstone?
Drill holes are cheaper. I mean, that's the easiest way to say it. For smaller market caps, as well capitalized as we are, we're still a small market cap, and there's challenges for smaller market caps. But so obviously not having to drill through 200, 300, 400 meters of overburden certainly makes drill holes cheaper.
Yeah, so they're shallower.
We don't have the sandstone cover, but we do still have the potential for very significant sequences of glacial till that we have to drill through. So the big advantage is we'd have the till either way. This way we're just removing the sandstone out of the middle. So I mean, the targets are still hidden.
Yeah. Is that where soil sampling or vegetation sampling comes into play? Are those useful tools to you and to find in these areas?
They can definitely make a difference. And as you saw in the slide that I put up for Hatchet Lake, there are a lot of reconnaissance work previously being done. It just needs to be drilled now.
Yeah. Okay. Just a couple more questions. Hatchet Lake, it's located on the eastern side of the basin. A lot of work's been done out there, but not necessarily in this area. Can you maybe just, provide a little bit of color on the potential that you see from working on the east instead of the west?
Well, yeah, obviously, you want to be near production. You want to be in an area that's giving, and obviously that's been well established along those domains on the northeast side. So in terms of being in great ground, that's great ground. When you can find underexplored ground that has the right indicators, and a little bit of smoke, and you're that close to production and deposits of size, then that's a great place to be. So that was really the main focus, is to find something that's not too far off the beaten track. We wanted it to be underexplored, and but look, I mean, Hathor, Rio Tinto did work there. It's not like you can bet on the data, and the great thing is a lot of that data was obtained prior to the knowledge that we have today. Yeah. And you're right. So a lot of that was sort of blind drilling, just to drill, and who knows why or where or what they were looking for and how they were doing it. But our understanding of where uranium deposition is today is far greater than where it was. So we have that advantage going into that ground, and we like that scenario.
Right. I think the world changed on March 3rd, 2009, when Hathor put out those results from the basement. So, on a blind discovery. So, blind graphite discovery.
Impressed you have that date locked in your head.
Yeah, I was in a cab going to PDAC right around noon. So yeah, I recall that time. You're still quoting 30%. Are all of the institutions still holding the stock?
Yeah. We have no indication that anybody isn't. As I mentioned a few weeks back, Trevor and I did an event through you guys at Red Cloud where we had a lot of one-on-ones with institutions, and everybody seems to be absolutely fine. I mean, they're not super pleased that the market's corrected, but no one's changed their outlook. No one's changed their thesis on why they're in the space. You're always going to have some of the larger positions maybe moving a little bit. For example, in June, we know that the largest fund in our deal traded out 1 million shares, but 1 million shares with our volume over the course of 4 weeks isn't much to drop in the bucket. So yeah, I would say all 28 funds are still well in the deal. None of these funds were drill betters. All of these funds are long for the space and long for the project development, and so nothing's changed in that regard.
Great. And is there any way that investors can keep track of that, find those numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to. We don't publish them. That's one thing. But if anybody directly calls me or has a conversation with me, I'll drop some names. Okay. I'm happy to do that. We're going to respect the wishes of the funds, which is not, don't put us in your PowerPoint and all of that. But we're certainly happy to. I'm happy to have casual conversations with anybody, and I'm easy to get a hold of. So try me.
Yeah, I'm assuming most people don't have access to Bloomberg or IQ, but there is a website out there called holders.com. They will give you that info. Stockwatch, I think, uses holders.com, and they charge about $1 a search for that. Often you'll see just largely insiders and short positions and only major ownership positions, not smaller ones. So I just pulled up yours. Asset Management, 61.5 million shares, 12.5% of the company, a couple insiders, tiny short positions. That's what I see. So not everybody that buys or institutions have to report what they own.
Well, I have a full list, as the Red Cloud people would have.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants specific, we're certainly grateful.
Okay, well, why don't we wrap it up there, guys? So, thank you very much, Alex Trevor from Azincourt Energy. Thank you, everybody else, for tuning in. Red Cloud Securities will be back next Monday afternoon when Taylor sits down with Evie Nickel. That's July 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. David, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.